Hi guys, so before I get into the build of this video, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone that's been sending in sprues. As you can see, I've got quite a few here. This one was just recently sent in to me by a chap called Ryan, so cheers Ryan. But yeah, also thank you to everyone else who's been sending them in, because this kind of represents about 1/15 of what I've got. So yeah, so basically I've got a variety of boxes, small, big, large. But yeah, it's probably at least 15 more lots of this amount. And yeah, I only live in a small place, so I'm kind of running out of room. So for the month of May, I've set myself a challenge where every build I do, I'm going to be building purely from these, nothing else. So it's going to be 100% sprue build. Obviously there'll be some glue involved, and depending on what I build, there may be some wire. But I'm not too sure. But basically that'll be it. So it will be purely sprues, which is going to be pretty awesome. So yeah, look forward to seeing what I can make. Obviously today's video, I've done some terrain, because everyone's always asking me for terrain, and it's something I don't sort of typically do a lot of. But yeah, so obviously this month we'll be doing, or May, we'll be doing a lot of terrain, as well as vehicles and some more figures and models and stuff. So yeah, so this one's quite a nice simple little thing. But basically I've made these little containers. I don't know how well you can see. They've kind of got like a corrugated effect to them. That'll be coming up in another video. I'll show how I'm making corrugated bits and other little bits and pieces. But for now, we'll get into the video and I'll show you how I made some containers only using sprues. Okay, let's crack on. So the first thing I need to do is to make some ooey gooey sprue stuff, so I can make some panels later on. And normally I've got loads of nibbly knobbly bits left over in a box from previous builds, but as I haven't built anything for quite some time using sprues, I have to start making my own nibbly knobbly bits by basically cutting up some sprues, which I can then melt or dissolve, whichever term you prefer, in some acetone. So when I do this, I always cut up bits from the inside of the sprue, just as I like to keep the outer edge, because obviously it has the longer pieces of sprue which I use for other things. So it doesn't take long to get a nice pile of nibbly knobbly bits, and here's a jar that I've got with acetone in it and already some melted sprues. So people often ask, what do I do with the acetone when I'm finished with it? Well, basically I'm never finished with it, because obviously I keep it in the jar all the time. So all I do is add some more sprues, let them turn into goo, and then I use that goo for certain projects, and then basically whatever acetone's left in there stays in the jar, and I'll just replenish and put more nibbly knobbly bits in. So this way neither the sprue or the acetone ever gets wasted, as it's just continually used and used and used. And there we go, once the lid's on, I'll then leave this for a good 8 hours or more till it's fully dissolved, melted, again whatever term you prefer. And there we go, a good 8 hours later, and it's ready to use for me to make some panels with. So my preferred method for doing this is to get a nice big dollop of the ooey gooey sprue stuff, put it on this greaseproof tray, then get some more greaseproof paper, which I then put over the top of this, and then taking my rolling pin, which has got adjustable ends on it, so you can make these panels whichever thickness you need. And in my case I like going for the 2mm ones, as basically this makes a nice thin panel, and obviously it dries a lot quicker. And then it's just a case of rolling it all out, keep going until it's completely smooth, flat, and yeah, it doesn't roll out anymore basically. The other great thing with this ooey gooey sprue stuff is that it is nice and soft, and it can be put inside this metal syringe. So I can then make some nice long thin rods, which are ideal for all sorts. They don't always come out perfectly straight, but that's fine, because I can use some of these for wires and, well, all kinds of other weird bits and pieces. So everything I do keep. So then onto the sides of the containers, I've already made up loads of these panels. There will be another video out very soon showing how I did this, as I've made up loads and loads of moulds, and I've done lots of casting with the ooey gooey sprue stuff, which has come out pretty well. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell so you don't miss out on when that video comes out. And the great thing about all the panels I do, they can easily be cut with a normal pair of scissors. So I only made these panels about 7 hours ago, which is why they're still relatively soft and can be flexed and bent into whatever shape you need really, which is pretty cool. So obviously I've made loads and loads of panels because I want to make 3 containers. With most builds that I do with sprues, I like to make a framework that's inside, as this just makes the whole thing nice and secure and strong, and obviously it doesn't wibble, wobble or fall down. So yeah, taking some more sprues, and this is what I mean by using the outer edge of the sprue. So I'll cut away the inside, which I'll obviously use later on for making possibly nibbly knobbly bits to melt the sprues. But yeah, so this outer edge bit is perfect, as obviously it has nice long straight edges. So just a case of cutting off the edges, and then obviously cutting off the all important smaller nibbly knobbly bits, which again, these will all go in a little box and will end up in a jar of acetone at some stage. As these sprues are making up a framework that's going to be inside something so you're not going to see it, I don't need to be too clean or neat with these, as in I don't need to sand these down in any way, because say you're not going to see these sprues, they are purely there to make a nice strong framework. There we go, we've got quite a lot of nice long lengths now which we can use to make the framework up, and obviously we've got loads more nibbly knobbly bits here. So these will go in this little box that I have, to be used later on basically. So again, everything that I use here, nothing really gets wasted, because it does get used at some stage or other in some sort of building really, which is pretty cool. So now I've got all my sprue panels and my sprues to make the framework. Now it's just the time to crack on and get it all glued together. And the simplest way to do this is to use one of the panels. I've taken the shortest one here, so then this way they'll all be the same size. And then basically it's just a case of cutting up some of these longer lengths of sprue to the size I need. And then just checking it is going to fit just on the inside of the panel. I can then go ahead and cut up several more. So I can make a kind of a rectangular sized box that'll be the inside of these containers. So I could use a normal cement glue on these, but as I want them to dry nice and quick, I'm going to use some super glue instead. Obviously I prefer using the cement glue as it doesn't stick your fingers to everything. Whereas super glue, well, my fingers end up caked in the stuff and I actually hate it. But as I say, I want these to glue nice and quick. So in this case, I am using the super glue. And then I continue to glue the sprues to the inside of the panels. And there we go, so that's all of them done now. And now I can attach them upright, so I can start attaching 2 panels to each other. So again, using super glue again for nice quickness. And then it's just a case of gluing these sprues into each of the 4 corners. If you haven't already guys, it'd be great if you could hit that thumbs up button, as that really does help my channel and promotes it to more people. And there we go, that's the last leg going on. Or it does look like an upside down table. So now we can get the top part on. As you can see, I'm kind of working on all 3 of the containers at the same time, just as this makes it easier for me. As you can see, some of the corrugated panels have come out better than the others, but as this is kind of like an orc build, or just a general rough terrain build, these panels having these sort of like dents, indentations isn't too bad, as it can be kind of like wear and tear, and in some cases possibly even bullet holes. And then it's a case of gluing the top part on. So these containers are going to have 3 sides with a corrugated pattern on, and then basically either end is just going to be a smooth panel. So these panels haven't come out too bad, but I kind of rushed them, and by that I mean I moved them quite quickly after rolling them out. So to get perfectly smooth, nice flat panels, you really have to roll them out and then leave them for a good 24 hours. But sometimes I get impatient. So these have only been rolled out about 7 hours, if that. But yeah, I want to sort of crack on and get this thing built. And again, it doesn't matter in this build if the panels do look a bit rough and ready, as that just adds texture to this particular build. But yeah, as I say, if you do want to roll out panels and make them really nice and smooth without any sort of creases in them or that rough sort of animal texture looking, you need to roll them out and then basically not touch it, not move it, not do anything to it for at least, well, I'd leave it a whole day, I'd leave it 24 hours. And then you'll get a nice, perfectly smooth panel. But say, for the kind of builds that I like doing, which are these sort of rough and ready ones, I use them after about 7 hours because, yeah, I just want to use them basically. So yeah, so I'm just doing a bit of cheating now, I'm just sort of gluing the panel on and then basically cutting around it. So rather than using the ruler and cutting and measuring, yeah, I'm going for the sort of the cheap and easy way of doing it. But obviously you guys, whenever you build something, the more care you take, obviously the cleaner and neater it will look. But this is going to end up looking like a rust bucket at the end anyway. So say having this this rough and ready look will look good for the end result. That's the basic shape and look sort of complete now, and I'm happy with how it's looking. But to sort of finish it off and to make it look a bit obviously neater looking, I'm just going to get some more of the flat panels and cut up some nice thin strips, which I can then use to sort of glue around the edges and the corners of the containers, just to make it look a bit more neater and a bit more like the containers look in, well, in some of the reference pictures that I've been looking at, basically. Don't forget, guys, for the whole of May, I'm going to be making only builds using sprues. So quite a challenge to myself, but should be fun. And as I say, I have got loads and loads of boxes of sprues, and I do need some more room in my bedroom, basically. So yes, I'm looking forward to making a whole variety of things, from terrain, vehicles, and as I say, one of my next builds I'm going to be doing is the Great Unclean one. Something that I made a good 9 months ago when I first started this channel, and it was definitely one of the first things that I actually built with the ooey gooey spruey stuff. So yeah, it'd be fun to rebuild the Great Unclean one, now knowing a bit more what I do know with the sprues. And yeah, so it should come out a lot better, which would be cool. So anything in particular you'd like to see me make, by all means leave it in the comments. As I say, my preferred sort of style and look for things, obviously love orcs, love nurgly kind of stuff, mainly because it kind of fits in well with how the sprues look. As I say, you can get the sprues looking a lot cleaner and a lot neater, but it does take a whole lot longer. So I can have a go at doing some sort of like imperial stuff, or something that needs to be looking a bit neater. But yeah, again, my painting skills I think are more tuned in for yeah, nurgly stuff and damaged stuff and rust. So obviously back to the build, you can see obviously, as I was just showing there, in lots of areas there are quite a few gaps, which is understandable because obviously I didn't really use a ruler to cut the thin strips of the panels. So what I can do now, again, this ooey gooey stuff is just awesome because I can use it now as a filler and basically just go around all the edges or anywhere where there's big gaps really and fill it with this stuff. I can kind of smooth it out as I'm going along with this, but then once it is fully dry, if need be, it can be sanded. So the ooey gooey sprue is definitely an awesome filler for this kind of build, and possibly you could use it well. You could use it wherever you wanted to really. Obviously you can use obviously smaller, finer bits if you're doing some sort of miniature and you needed to fill in little gaps or cracks, then this certainly is a good option for that. So I decided to give it a quick little light sand at the end. Probably didn't really need it, but just to get rid of a few little bits here and there that I wasn't too happy with. Yeah, a little bit of sanding. Because I only used small bits of the ooey sprue stuff, it only took about 10 minutes or so, if that, to sort of fully dry and harden. So obviously the smaller amounts you use, the quicker it dries basically. So that's all done, and yeah, so that's basically it. So now I need to go on to the end bits where obviously the doors are going to be. So these are the final little bits to put on, and I'm going to use some of the sprues that I've got, but I'm going to keep on some of the nibbly knobbly bits just because they add a little bit of character to it, and these are going to be like the centre bit to sort of divide the two doors basically. So if you do have any unwanted sprues you don't no longer need or want or feel you do anything with, by all means, yeah, I'm still accepting sprues because I will be making lots more things with sprues obviously. I do no longer have the PO box address though, as it basically was costing me £37 a month, which I can't really afford at the moment because I'm still not really working properly. So I don't have the PO box, but if you do have any sprues you want to send me, if you email me, then I will give you an address where you can send them to basically. So just finishing off the doors with the last little bit now, those sort of rods, which are basically the bits that help keep the doors sort of shut. There we go, so I've primed it in a dark red, so it's all ready to, well, pretend to a rust bucket basically. And I'm going to my usual go-to sort of method for the rust, and that's using the brown sort of paint and then some good old grout basically, or filler. But I'm mixing the two together, just gives it a nice thick consistency, and it's a bit bitty then as well. So it just obviously adds texture to the paint. And then using a good old bit of a sponge, I can then just sort of dab it on here and there. No real pattern to this basically, it is just a case of, well, wherever you feel like you want to put some rust, sort of chuck it on. Obviously this is going to get painted afterwards, so some of the rust you'll be able to see, and some of the lumpy bits you won't, but it'll still be bumpy bits underneath whatever colour these eventually are basically. And then I finished them all off with some black wash, and this is how they look. And then I recently saw on Bill Making Stuff's channel where he basically put some PVA glue over something and then painted onto the PVA glue, heated it up, and then obviously as the PVA glue dried really quickly, it made all the paint that was above it crack. So I thought, hey, that looked a good idea. So I thought I'd have a go at doing the same sort of thing. So I covered this obviously all in PVA glue, left it a little while so it was still nice and tacky, and then painted the colour over it that I was going to be making these containers. Each one's going to be a different colour, but in this case this container was going to be a nice yellow. So yeah, while the PVA glue is still tacky, I've gone ahead, painted over the top, and then once I did all that, I then used a heat gun over the top of it. Unfortunately, I thought I had filmed myself doing that, but I can't seem to find the footage. But basically, I used the heat gun over the top of this, and rather than obviously drying the PVA nice and quickly, it actually started to melt the whole container. Obviously, because it's made of plastic, the plastic started to melt, and even my fire alarm in my flat went off. So yeah, it's not a good idea. So I had to resort back to the other method that I kind of do when I do the rust first, which is then dabbing on the paint afterwards. This isn't my preferred method of doing this, as I do now prefer painting whatever it is in the colour it's going to be, and then adding the rust afterwards. But say, because I tried out a new sort of thing on this one with the PVA, which obviously didn't work in this case, I then had to obviously leave it with the rust underneath, and then put the paint over the top. I mean, the end result isn't too bad. I just prefer the look of the other way, and prefer doing the other way basically. And to then help the whole thing look a bit more like it is sort of metal in there, just do a light bit of dry brushing with some silver. Again, this just goes all over the edges, hits all the highlights, bits and pieces here and there, and it just makes it look more like this thing was originally metal. Obviously it's been painted, it's been rusted, but yeah, just generally this gives it a nice good look, and it's nice and simple to do because it just literally just hits all the edges. And obviously I like it when the painting is nice and simple, because that is my kind of style of painting. And then the last thing to go over the whole thing, I've got some more of this Vallejo rust wash, nice little orangey sort of rusty look, really watery, so it sort of drips in nice and easily. But in this case I'm going to just lather the whole thing with this stuff, just because I like the look of it in both obviously the rusty areas and even over the paint. It just makes the paint look like it's sort of obviously starting to go rusty. I will sometimes dab bits and pieces off if I feel like I've got too much on, but in general, yeah, just go over the whole thing with this rust wash look. And there we go, that's the final sort of look. So these are definitely very weathered and beaten and worn looking. Again, the paint job, I'm reasonably happy with it, but I would have preferred doing my usual sort of painting scheme. But say, I wanted to try something new, because it is good to try new things, because if they work, awesome. And if they don't, well, at least then you know not to do that thing the next time. So, there we go guys, 3 containers made purely from using sprues. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to click on that like button. And if you're new here, hit the subscribe button up the top there. And if you want to help support the channel, become a patron just over here. There's another video just over here, so you can see more of what I do. Okay guys, that's it. Bye for now.